And this container is basically, if you look at it, it's a very low level object as part of this entire Kubernetes world, right? So basically a container resides where? Within a pod, and pod resides where? Within a node. And who is handling these pods and all those things? Basically it is handled by replica set, right? So these are basically your Kubernetes objects in terms of Kubernetes world. And how these are objects created? In order to create these objects, you have to write the configurations, and that configuration looks like this. Now you may ask, hey Vikas, I'm simply updating this image, but how Kubernetes is going to pick all these configurations and creating these Kubernetes objects? Of Okay, good question. At first stage, you know, at first stage, when you update this image, right? Since none of these objects are created at the first stage, so Kubernetes has the understanding of of these configurations that you have written, right? And if you look at this configuration here, it's a kind. What is a kind? It's a deployment. So it is going to create a deployment object, right? Now, how these pods, container are being maintained? So these are being maintained using the label detector, meaning if Kubernetes is going to create a deployment object, right, in the within the cluster, then how deployment would know, okay, I have to maintain this specific replica set, and within that replica set I have to maintain these pods. How it is going to know? In order to identify or determine this, right, you have to maintain the labels. As you can see here, for this deployment, the label is demo node app. The same label is being used for replica. This replica is basically to create the replica set object, and this metadata, within this metadata we have a container with the same name as demo node app. So basically this is a label detector which Kubernetes uses to detect these labels and see what all labels or what all pods has the same label name, and using that it basically maintain all these synchronization, right? So we'll be seeing all these configurations basically in detail for services, for deployment, for pod, right? We'll be seeing all of them in the next stage. But in general, once we have the image published, right, Argo CD detects that change, it passes to the Kubernetes reads that configuration, and it finally create these objects in order to sync that specific source code within these containers. And once Kubernetes does that, you'll be having the latest code placed within these pods, and finally you can make use of that latest code for your business flow, right? Enough talking. Now let's see all these things in action for CD.